Welcome, everyone. Awesome. Just want to give a quick shout out to all of the cosplayers. You guys are amazing. The amount of passion you put into this is awe-inspiring. So you're here for improving player behavior in League of Legends. I'm George Skleres. I'm a game engineer at Riot Games. So how many people in the audience have played League of Legends? Pretty much everyone. Quick introduction, just in case some of you haven't. League of Legends is a multiplayer online battle arena. It's a game where you log online, and it's 2 teams, 5 versus 5, competitive game. You're playing against each other to destroy each other's base. So in every game, you're usually playing against 1 or more strangers. Today, we're going to be discussing player behavior. So, I don't know if I can get this clicker to work. There we go. Heads up, there's going to be inappropriate language. There may be some offensive things said. There will be many fucks given. Okay, so what are we going to discuss here today? We want to talk about the League of Legends gaming community. We want to talk about player behavior as it relates to League of Legends. And we want to talk about general psychology principles and gaming. The panel's only an hour long, and we want to get to as many questions as you guys that you guys have as we can about player behavior. So some of the things we're not going to discuss today, championship balance, etc. And we also want to refrain from talking about individual cases. We don't want to get into the nitty-gritty. We want to stay at a more higher level. So the panelists, I'm still George. I'm a game engineer. My summoner name is Fruit Strike. I'm also a gay gamer. I love board games, and I love making game designers do push-ups.
Hi, my name is Kwoh. I'm a producer at Riot Games. My summoner name is Status Quo. And I've been doing...
We think it's clever, too.
Well, they keep telling me it's clever. And I've been in the game industry working on games for about 10 years.
I'm Davin Pavlas. I'm a senior user researcher at Riot Games. My summoner name is Davin because original. I have a PhD in human factors psychology, which means I'm just the best at parties.
My name is Jeff Wade. I'm a lead designer at Riot Games. I'm better known to most of you as Professor Dr. Light.
Okay, so a term we're going to use today is toxic behavior. And toxic behavior has been a big focus of the player behavior team. What exactly is toxic behavior? It's anything that players do in a match of League of Legends that may negatively impact the play experience for other players. And this can manifest in a bunch of different ways. So toxic behavior can be offensive language, racist terms, homophobic slurs, sexism, etc. Or just verbally abusing someone with swear words. You know, we're not opposed to swearing in the game, but when you target it at someone to harass them, that's toxic behavior. And toxic behavior can also include things like feeding kills to the enemy teams when you're upset, so that you purposefully throw your match, for example. So there's a lot of different ways that toxic behavior can exist. And here's I think many of you are familiar with this. Yeah, so this is the greater internet fuckwad theory from Penny Arcade. And when you take a normal person, you give them anonymity and an audience, they become just a total fuckwad. And we agree mostly with this, but with one small change. Credit to GTZ from FatUglyOrSlutty.com, who made this one change to it, that it's not so much anonymity as it is when you have a lack of consequences. That's when they become a total fuckwad. So to give you an example, if you're driving your car and someone gives you the finger, they're not anonymous, but they can just drive away without any consequences. If you were walking down the street, the same person might think twice about giving the finger. You're right next to them. And this is my beautiful art. I'm being reconsidered for lead character artist again at Riot. So here's a typical match in Summoner's Rift. Yes, this is Summoner's Rift. So we have blue team on the left, and we got purple team on the right, and
highly detailed.
And player 10, you know, all of these are normal players, normal typical players, don't normally exhibit toxic behavior, but player 10's had a really bad day. One of his clients got mad at him and yelled at him, his boss gave him some bad news. So player 10's already a little frustrated, and his jungler ganks the lane and winds up giving double bust the enemy. So player 10 says some choice words to player 6, who was a jungler, and player 6 doesn't like that. And yes, I'm also going to become a particle artist too, as you can see. So, yeah, Varus ultimate. So player 10 has wound up corrupting some of the other peoples in the match. His toxic behavior is spread, and they get really pissed off too. And then all chat, next thing you know, everyone's bickering on all chat, and everyone else starts getting upset, and by the end of the match, everyone's either upset or they're just sad that they were in the match to begin with. So what happens? Time for the next game. Player 6, who is now upset because of some toxic behavior that player 10 exhibited, is going into his next game already upset, and he's more likely to exhibit toxic behavior there. And it's a ripple effect that starts just from one player who normally is not a toxic player. We firmly believe that League of Legends players in general are very sportsmanlike. We all want to have fun, we all want to play the game, and we don't normally exhibit toxic behavior. But things that happen both inside and outside the game can drive us to atypical bursts of this toxic behavior. You know, I think most people are guilty of having a tough game every now and then and maybe saying something that they shouldn't, or having a difficult time keeping it down when normally they're level-headed. We think this is really preventable. And so that's a pretty complicated challenge. How do you do this? So, Carl, do you want to talk about our core pillars?
Sure. So when we first started the player behavior initiative, we really understood that, like, we can't just, oh, the player behavior problem, we'll solve that Tuesday in school. It was pretty daunting of a task to really understand what we even meant and what we wanted to target. We got into a room, the entire team, a bunch of people, and we said, what are the things we want to work on? What do we want to research about this? How do we want to, think about this problem? And as we discussed it and as we thought about it, some themes kind of boiled to the top of like strategies and sort of basically paths to victory that we could potentially take. And these really became our core pillars, and I'm going to take you guys through them now. The first core pillar is to shield players from toxic behavior. We know we're not ever going to have a perfect system. There's always going to be bad days. There's always going to be people who say something that they probably shouldn't have said once in a blue moon. And so what we need to make sure that we're doing is shielding players from the full impact of that toxic behavior when it does happen, and try to prevent that ripple effect. Our second core pillar is to remove or reform or remove toxic players. And the reason why I went out of my way to correct myself there is because that's a really important order of words and choice of words. We firmly believe at this point that our path to victory is through reforming players, showing players how to be at least neutral, if not positive, members of the community, rather than just trying to remove them all. Because unfortunately, we're a free-to-play online game, and that's really great for all of you guys playing the game, but it's not so great for trying to have bans have a lasting impact on players. People can just create a new account. So we focus on reform first and then remove secondarily. Third is we want to create a culture of sportsmanship. This is basically, we recognize that our small dev team is not really going to be able to change the entire internet overnight, or perhaps ever. That's really going to come from players like yourselves, and we really need to engage with the community and have the open discussion with you and understand this problem together with you guys, because the only way we're going to make this difference is if you guys start to have the expectation of sportsmanship of each other and hold each other to that standard. And that's what this pillar is about. We really need to work with you guys to create that culture of expectations. Fourth is reinforce positive behaviors. The reform or remove is a lot about teaching people like how not to be bad, but you still need the flip side to that coin, where you understand what makes a good player, what makes a positive player, and how do I have an aspirational path to be good, rather than just how not to be bad. And then finally, we want to create better match chemistry. We recognize that when you're playing League of Legends, I'm sure many of you guys have had this experience, when you're in a game with 10 friends, like just playing an in-house match, it's one of the most fun experiences you can have. And certainly when you're on a team of 5 players, it's so much fun, and very rarely do you ever run into toxic behavior. What we want to be able to do is find ways that every match can feel like that, right? Like, even if you're coming into a room full of strangers, there are ways for you guys to build trust and build confidence in each other, so it feels more like playing with friends all the time rather than just only when you queue with friends. And that's kind of how we break down that really big, complex problem into at least vectors that we can go down to try and make a difference.
Cool, so we know you guys have a ton of questions. We've got 2 microphones, one in each of these lanes, just at the first break here. So we're going to talk real briefly about 2 of our tools, Tribunal and Honor System, but if you guys could line up, anyone who has any questions, go ahead and start lining up now. We're just going to do a brief minute on this, and then Jeff and David, you guys want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, sure. So as you guys know, in League of Legends, you can rate each other on a variety of dimensions. For example, if you had a negative experience with the player, you can report them for verbal abuse or offensive language. What the Tribunal does, it's a system in the game that bubbles the worst offenders to the top, and it builds a case for them. So for example, the case might have chat logs, item builds, team compositions. We then present these back to you guys, the community, where you guys now tell us, is this behavior appropriate in League of Legends?
And as Carl mentioned, it's not just about punishment and reform. We also want to let people recognize positive behaviors, and that's where the Honor Initiative comes in. It's a way for players to rate when other players show good teamwork or are honorable opponents, and when players accumulate enough of these different honors, they unlock little crests that show to other players that they are pillars of our community, that they are players that you are going to have a good time with when they are in your game.
Cool, awesome.
Good questions.
Yeah, so let's get to the questions. Seems like there's a lot of you guys.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Joshua Kramer. I'm 35 years old. I'm a professional, an urban professional. I have 2 children, one age 2 and one age 0. So I come at this from an avenue of thinking about what it would be like in, say, 5 or 6 or 7 years when my daughter gets online and plays a game like your game, which I enjoy a great deal, but I mute almost everyone I play with. Here's my question for you. In League of Legends, unlike other games with tremendously toxic behaviors, which I can think of right now, Battlefield 3, Gears of War, populated by scores of revolting 13-year-old potty mouths, what you can't do is quit. If you're in the position where you want to quit League of Legends, walk away from those disgusting, repulsive people like I will tell my 2-year-old daughter to do, you're punished. Your game says to you, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. I'm going to make it worse. So you sit there and take it because that's what we want our game to teach you. And I don't think that's a valuable lesson. So I wonder, in the middle of all these player behavior initiatives, have you considered adding a report and quit feature?
So League of Legends is a team-based game, and that teamwork is actually really important. We have looked at a variety of features and ideas around that, and definitely looked into the leaving issue and a lot of the issues you bring up. That said, I'm not sure that saying, hey, like, it's okay to leave is necessarily the right choice given the game type that we are and our reliance on teamwork. I think that creating more features and working with the community to, one, create the expectation that that negative behavior won't necessarily crop up as much in 6 or 7 years when your daughter is ready to experience League of Legends. But also making it so that when that toxic experience occurs, it doesn't impact her very much, right? There will be tools that are ideally better than mute and better than leaving in place where she won't experience the full impact of that. And I think that's where our focus is right now rather than the bail on the game option.
So I guess my question then is, you're trying to fix this in real time during a game when someone is toxic?
It's very possible, right? So one of the known weaknesses of the Tribunal is simply speed, right? Many players will complain that, hey, we're not actually punishing players till many weeks after the fact. We are trying to plan on systems that can intervene before they even get on the Tribunal. But like Carl said, I'm not sure the goal is to teach players that they can simply leave. We're in a world where more and more players spend their lives growing up online, and they're learning about social norms and standards online now. So recently,
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
The social norm when someone is calling you a name is to leave. If I were, for instance, to start calling you all up their names, you'd eject me from the room. If the guy behind me were to start cursing at me, I would back off.
But except not to interrupt you, and I apologize for that, but you wouldn't do that in a team sport, right? And the idea of League of Legends is that this is trying to mirror a team sport angle. And so, like, if someone is calling you names on the soccer field, you shouldn't make your teammates suffer by walking off the field and forcing them to lose the game.
If someone were to call me names in a semi-professional, or professional soccer game, I would not leave. But the fact of the matter is, I'm a professional investment banker, not a professional game player. And if I were clicking a box somewhere that said, I'm going to get paid for this, it would be very different.
I don't disagree. The straight answer is we're looking into a variety of different ways. I think that you and I perhaps disagree slightly on the approach, but we're very open to looking into that, and we can absolutely look at leaving as potentially an option that might reduce some level of toxicity down the road. We're very open to community feedback.
So we'd be more than happy to talk with you more about it after, but we want to get to some more questions as well, if that's okay. Thanks. Okay, so on the right.
Hi, my name's Connor. I currently live in Worcester, Mass. I've been playing League of Legends for about 2.5 years, and something that's always popped up on the Reddit is a pre-game, like in the lobby scenario, report system. Is there anything that's, I know that in the PvE right now, I'm also an avid PvE player, but you guys have a system where if you random pick, then it causes a kick for that person, and all sorts of cool stuff that's all coming up. But there's nothing in which you can report someone before the game starts. Is there anything like that coming up?
So how many of you guys are on the forums often? Good. So pretty recently, this team right here had a chat with players about Champ Select and what are the problems that we feel are in Champ Select. So what's happening every single game is we're basically throwing 5 strangers together, giving you 90 seconds to negotiate exactly what you want to play. That is not the ideal situation. So right now, we've been doing a lot of research in this space on what are the potential solutions and what they look like. So as you guys might know, we talked a lot about, WoW Dungeon Finder. Would that work for League of Legends? Or what about Vote Kick? Is that something that could work in League of Legends? So we don't have anything for sure that we can talk about, but we're currently doing research on this space.
And I would say if you're interested in participating in that discussion, that forum thread is up, and I do check it every day, even while I'm on the road. So if you have an opinion, if you want to contribute to the discussion, go engage with other players in that forum thread specifically about the problem of champion select, and we'd love to hear your input and your ideas.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Hey, so I actually had a question about matchmaking, but the gentleman before me had a really interesting point. And how are you going to deal with this community who are jerks as a rule? I've been playing video games for a really long time, and someone got up here and was a little bit brusque, and one person here called him a douche. Someone back there said, "Why are you letting your kid play video games?" There's no consequences, and the consequences, like for the Tribunal, are far away. Nobody cares. How are you gonna have consequences that matter? And that's my question.
So just to challenge one part of the thesis there, we don't actually have any evidence that the community is overwhelmingly full of jerks. Like, you'll find that in this audience, it wasn't everyone that turned and yelled at this person.
No, it wasn't, but it swells. It very quickly. Someone said something, someone started rumbling in the back, and the audience as a whole doesn't have to be, but very much like you're saying with the toxic person, one person says something, and someone says, "That's right, they're a jerk, he's a douche, why is he letting his kid play video games?" And it, like right now, can you hear it? Quickly turns, and you need immediate consequences.
We don't think of it as a battle. Okay. I think battling the community sort of sets out with the idea that it is negative to begin with.
Sure, and my language might be imprecise.
Towards that end, I think it really comes down to the shielding aspect that Carl spoke to before, in that things are going to crop up. Right? Sure. In every social interaction, there's the potential for conflict. We just need to create systems that allow for sort of a graceful degradation of that state.
Thanks.
Okay, on the right.
Hello. First off, we'd like to thank you guys for all the hard work you do on Team PB&J. Big fan of yours, Dr. Light, particularly. Thanks. I'm interested, particularly though, in the other game modes that you guys happen to have. I don't know if you remember that. You all work at Riot. There's this Dominion. Is a thing. Somewhat. But I was particularly interested, do you guys see any particular differences in player behavior and reporting and toxicity in the Dominion environment versus Summer's Rift and Twisted Tree Line, also Twisted Tree Line?
I'm going to give you a big surprise here, but it's ranked solo queue is probably the highest toxicity in the game right now.
Goodness!
I have a second surprise for you. Co-op versus bots is the lowest toxicity. But we do see a lot of patterns. So what's kind of interesting about ranked is, for example, many players play both ranked and they play normal. And we do know that there's far fewer complaints, far fewer incidences in normal, but when the same player goes to ranked, that level of reports goes up a notch. So to us, that's a sign that it's about context, right? It's not that we're all innately toxic. It's more about what is the environment we're in. When it's hyper-competitive, are we simply more critical of each other, and that's what's causing our behaviors to go slightly toxic. So we are noticing these kind of patterns and behaviors that differ across modes, but it isn't necessarily because the people are different.
And not necessarily because of the map, but because of the context in which that map is played. So if you had an intense Dominion ranked solo queue, which is not really a thing, but if that were there,
was that a confirmation that it's not on the way?
That is neither confirmation nor denial.
And like, was that earlier a confirmation that Dominion is not competitive?
You're talking to a Twisted Tree Line mega fan.
Sorry. Second question, if I may. Are there plans for a Tribunal app or a more mobile-friendly Tribunal webpage?
I mean, I think we want to be able to expose the Tribunal to a lot of players so that they can have access to it. Like, our goal is not to hide it away somewhere, really. I don't have anything specific to say there that I'm like, oh yeah, we're totally like, eh. But we do want to expand that a lot, and right now we're focusing on getting it into other countries.
Okay.
Up until recently, it's only been in AAU, but we've recently launched in Korea and Brazil and Taiwan, and we're focusing on that right now. So.
All right, well, thank you guys so much.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sam, and once again, I'd just like to thank you guys for being so, open about your processes and having such an open back and forth dialogue with the community about things like this, especially when it can get difficult. So my question is about what you guys think the role of professional players and streamers is in player behavior, and other than explicit bans or disciplinary actions against players or streamers you think exhibit toxic behavior. In a bad example, have you contacted or interacted with those players in any way to try and help them develop an environment that would be foster better behavior in their viewers?
I'll start, but then one of these guys will probably jump in. So there is a common misconception that pro players are simply immune from player behavior systems. A lot of players will complain like, like this guy's doing this, like why is he not banned? That's not true at all. In fact, we treat them just like any other player. In fact, we may have higher standards for them. And many pro players have gone through Tribunal and have been punished. They just don't talk about it, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I would say overall, the team that sort of identifies as player behavior within Riot, we are closest to the problem, but we really try to work with the everyone at Riot Games as far as understanding player behavior and what we're trying to accomplish and what the community feels about it. We've had specific conversations with the esports team, but they own sort of that side of it, and I know that they've been developing rules and standards that are similar to other competitive organizations, but they would handle all of that negotiation. I would say that we hold all players to the same standard, which the community should set as equally high across the bar. Absolutely, those guys have a slightly larger stage to broadcast their views, and I hope that they use it for the right reasons.
Thank you.
Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Brian. Thanks again for doing this, guys. I guess my question is sort of calling back to the greater internet fuckwad theory. You talked about sort of not necessarily anonymity being the sort of key concern, but consequences. I feel like the two are sort of linked together. For example, consequences would inevitably arise if, Jim Smith, who lives in Boston, works at company X, is a giant dick and lol. That's the sort of thing that could carry on and have consequences. The worst sort of consequence that you guys have talked about so far has essentially been a ban. Have you guys thought about doing something to potentially tie to like persistent player identity, where maybe if someone is, awful and gets reported all the time, rather than just banning them and having them create a new account and you lose all that data, just like black holing them so that they only play with other people who are also giant dick bags?
We can talk a little bit about that second idea, which is the sort of the prisoner's island idea, which is that if you're a jerk, you go and live in jerkland. The problem is that we really want people to be able to be good, and once you throw someone in that pit, I don't think they're ever going to manage to get out. Like if you're in an environment...
Or the Brazil service.
But just to kind of add to that, so Prisoner's Island, it has to do a lot with self-awareness, right? So when we introduced reform cards, which is a feature in the Tribunal that shows players exactly why they were banned, we got a lot of emails from players that they didn't ever realize that that behavior was not okay. So you have gamers coming from all around the world, coming from different backgrounds, different games, where there might not be standards in place, or where their own peers don't tell them that this behavior is not okay. And the one example that we talked about recently was, there was this 10-year-old boy who writes an email to me, and he's like, Dr. Light, I didn't realize I couldn't say the N-word online. And I'm like, a part of me is like, really?
Yeah, he's not making this up.
But the other half of me is like, oh, like, he had no clue. So if we threw this kid in Prisoner's Island, like, he just would never learn, right? He's not learning what it means to be a good member of the community, he's just learning what bad looks like.
Now, there is sort of the extension of the argument that maybe if we identify just the most horrible of the horrible of the horrible, we could do that. We're looking to other options for dealing with people that we think cannot reform.
Yeah, and just to quickly add on to that, we talked a little bit about this on the PBE and now live servers. We're introducing some features that go along with that first idea of more lasting consequences that you have to sort of play under in order, rather than just being like, hey, time out from the game. If you guys have heard of restricted chat, we launched that on the servers recently. That's kind of our first step toward that angle, and I'm sure we can talk more about that as it comes up.
Cool, thanks.
Next question. My name is Joe. When the honor system came out, I was really excited to get like recognition for sportsmanlike, but I've heard people never getting anything because no one really likes to, you know, give people recognition for their sportsmanlike. They only like to complain. So I was wondering if you guys are ever going to update that system to maybe make it like maybe a pop-up screen or something that will give you an option before you exit out to see stats to maybe honor them.
There's a couple different things we could mention here. So anytime a feature comes out, there's a huge spike in usage. To us, that's not normal usage. What you see now, which is positive players getting an honor every few games, that is considered normal usage. But we are considering new ways to kind of boost that system. For example, during the Christmas event, we gave positive players the Santa Bear. And I hope some of you guys here earned the Santa Bear. I did. A good number of you. That's cool. We learned a lot from that and what we want to do in the future. And in this year, 2013, we want to do a lot more surprises where if you're just a good summoner, we're just going to surprise you with cool stuff. And we also brainstormed a little bit about maybe we'll give a reward or a little gift for people who are great at identifying honorable players as well. So we're thinking of ways that we can change that system a little bit.
Yeah, just to emphasize though, people do use the honor system quite a bit to give you hope, right? Like it is actually used pretty widely. We just recently did a round of updates on the crests that you can unlock because it turns out that people who earn the crests actually do have more positive games than people who do not have the crests. So we've taken great care to make sure that the system still is in use, and lots of people are using it. People just talk about it a little bit less because it's been out for a while. So.
And will you ever make it so we could get like multiple crests?
You can have multiple crests right now. I've actually been the guy who's answered this on the forum a bunch, and so address all hate mail to status quo. Honestly, what we want to show is what we consider the hardest to get badge. And it's sort of like the coolest or the hardest one to get, and we show that. We did experiment with showing lots and lots of the badges, like if you unlocked all 4, you know, the obvious answer that we see on the forums all the time is, hey man, there's 4 badges in 4 corners, do the math, right? It literally looks like you just dumped a bag of Skittles on the screen, and it's really hard to tell what's going on, and it looks terrible, even when you don't have all 4. So we're open to looking at that more, but right now it just is overwhelming and confusing, and you can't tell who you're playing against. So,
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, next question.
Hello, my name is Sean. I'm still pretty new at the game. I've only been playing for about 3 months, and it's been up and down, but I've been mostly enjoying it, and it's a good game. But since I'm not even level 30 yet, it seems like everybody else begins life anew at level 30. I'm wondering if the Tribunal does anything towards anything lower level than that, and if so, does it deal with Smurfs and things like that, which are level 30 players then come back and just drag on all the low levels that are trying to learn?
Yeah, so the Tribunal does affect all games, period. If there are reports in the game, it is subject to going into the Tribunal, so it does actually affect all levels of summoners. We cap voters to level 20 right now, and that's more or less what we want to make sure is that we have voters who are aware of the cultural norms of the community and sort of understand the game enough to be able to make informed decisions about what they do or do not want in their community. But the Tribunal itself will affect all queues and all games.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Scott. I just have a question on the technical side of things. What kind of machine learning techniques are you using to identify players who are not necessarily toxic enough to be reported to Tribunal or not necessarily good enough to get an honorable ribbon but still project a positive force on the game?
I want to nerd out for an hour right now.
So we do have a person on, as a game designer on the PBJ team whose expertise is machine learning. To give you a kind of a sense of the craziness that we can do with this, we did an exercise a while back where we're like, is it even possible to build a model to predict bad behavior in the future? So we put all the scientists at Riot into a room for about 3 days, and when we came out, half of us were dead, but we had a model. And what this model could do was we could take a chatbot from a single game, and we can predict if one day you will end up in the Tribunal. But the question now is we're really concerned about directly intervening in many cases. Most of our features are about collaborating with the players and how do we shape our community together. So even though we had this powerful model, we weren't sure if we wanted to put it into the game, right? So we deal with ethics like this all the time, and we usually lean towards let's just work together with the players instead of trying something like that.
And some of the other things we've done are things like the text analysis on what things toxic players say and what things good players say. We found that words like noob and reported were actually most used by toxic players, whereas real-life names were most used by positive players, which suggests that players are having the most good time when they're playing with their friends, which is part of why we're focusing on this match chemistry issue.
Yeah, it sounds like a paper about Twitter contextual analysis. Right. Thank you.
Gentlemen, I'm Sam, and I was wondering if you've thought about the Tribunal and the Tribunal rankings and the players' rankings on that and their accuracy. If you've wondered if players might just skip reading the chat log and just vote to ban people, just because I read a forum post that people were influenced to do that. They would say 90% of the time they would just if they did that, they would just get a
IP?
Yeah, they get the IP or that their ranking would go up.
So that's one of the remaining really large misunderstandings of the Tribunal system. So a long time ago, when we were still kind of getting our feet wet, the Tribunal did hand down IP. So you got currency for getting cases correct. And there were cases here and there of players going to Tribunal and they would just hit a random button because even if you got half correct, you got half of the IP, which is not terrible. But what we did actually was early last year in September, we removed the IP reward. 30 days later, we introduced a feature we call Justice Reviews, which is now a profile page where you can see your contributions to the community. What we haven't told back to the players yet is we lost about 10% of our judges when we removed the IP reward. So you might argue that these are judges that were going there just for the currency. But when we launched Justice Reviews in the 30 days after that, we saw almost 100% increase in judges that have stayed in the system since then. So we did a last check a couple weeks ago about who are still in the system trying to abuse it or just spam punish. I think we got 27 people. So it's gone dramatically down from over a year ago.
Okay, but do you think that people would just do it just get that ranking up to I'm the best judge and just keep hitting to guilty just so that they get that higher ranking?
We haven't seen that in the data yet, but that's something that we do monitor almost daily.
Okay, thanks. Next question?
Hi, my name's James, and occasionally I know I'm going to have a bad game. I'm going to be a mad bro. I'm going to yell. And I know these are probably saved, but whenever I'm reported, I'd be curious to know what I'm most likely reported for. Because I want to learn from my own experience and not from when I finally get hit by the tribunal.
Sure.
Have you ever thought about releasing some of the information about it? Not even all of it, just like what you're most reported for so people can avoid that behavior?
Sure. We've talked about this internally in the past, and a lot of our concern comes from the fact that a large number of players in our population will get reported someday for something. I don't say a lot in chat. I'm the guy who always comes in like, oh, I'll fill whatever role and I'll do my best and try to be polite every time. And I have, 15 reports under my belt for
reported for being nice.
reported for a variety of things when I had a bad game or whatever. And for the average player who's reported once in 100 games, telling them what they're reported for would just fill them with a sense of anxiety more than anything else. Like, oh, am I close to being in the tribunal? Or, oh, someone had a problem and had a bad day and reported me for whatever, and now I'm panicking about it. That's kind of a negative player experience that we really don't want to put on people. We have been thinking about it more recently of trying to understand, hey, if you're getting a spike of toxic behavior, getting reported a bunch, in a very short time span, and before you go to the tribunal, if you're ready to go to tribunal, intervening and saying, hey dude, you've been recently getting a lot of reports and we wanted to let you know about that, sort of what you're talking about, but we want to make sure we target it where it's not going to be panic-inducing for the generally good summer, but more of an intervention for someone who has the choice of staying on the toxic path or potentially going back to being sportsmanlike.
I think a common theme in things we're looking at now are shortening the feedback loop on many of our features. But as Carl mentions, as we shorten the feedback loop, we need to make sure that we don't make it panic-inducing, because it is a very common concern.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, on the right.
Hi guys, my name is Mike. I had a question about focusing. So we've talked about rewarding good players and reforming bad players. I work on a customer success team for Dell, and we spend a lot of time focusing on neutral customers and making them good. The honor system was a step towards that. What type of focus are you guys putting on taking neutral players and making them good? A lot of time we see that reduces our toxic, our negative feedback on customers. So I was just wondering what your guys' feedback was along that.
Yeah, I can start a little bit, and then I think Carl might want to jump in. You're absolutely correct. So most of the positive players, they're already being positive. They're doing the things that we want players to be doing. So we need to basically reinforce and show other players what they're doing. Toxic players, the truly toxic players that make up about 1% of our population, we need to find ways to either shield their impact or remove them from the game. But the neutral players, that's where we get the biggest impact in player behavior, right? They're the ones that any given game, they're given a decision and they could fork good or go bad. So they're the ones that we want to try to prevent the triggers that cause them to go bad and just nudge them a little bit towards the positive. And we strongly believe in the next year, that's the population we really want to focus on, along with the positive group.
Yeah, I mean, like, we definitely want to focus there, and we don't have anything to specifically announce today, but, like, that's definitely where our focus is, and I think that the two things that I think it really get us there is, one, reinforcing positive behaviors, and honor system is a step towards that, but finding other ways to do that, and then secondarily, I really do think that a lot of the power is in your guys' hands in this audience as far as creating a culture of sportsmanship and that expectation that you expect the guy next to you to not be a jerk, but to be at least decent, if not great, right? And the more we can have that reinforced, not from us on the forums, but from you guys on the forums and you guys in the games and you guys with your friends, right? That's how we get there, and that's how neutral players learn how to be good. So.
Awesome, thanks.
Hi there, my name's Dan. I've been playing this game for a very long time, over 3 years, and back when I started playing, the game was great, the community was pretty damn good. And now I recommend my friends play, and they start out making accounts, and they're playing with really toxic players, and a lot of that seems to be both people who are coming at this game as a new thing and don't know the community, but also a lot of people who are making smurfs because their level 30 account got temp banned or perma-banned. And so I was wondering if there's a way for you guys to really have that impact that the tribunals had at the higher levels, also at the lower levels, because I really want my friends to enjoy this game and get into it.
I think that's something we've noticed as sort of a negative drawback to bans. bans can shift that toxic behavior down to lower levels because they will make new accounts and play with players who are trying to get their feet wet. That's part of the reason why we're shifting our strategy a bit towards things like restricted chat that allow us to mitigate the impact those negative players have where they actually came from rather than shifting them all the way down.
And one of the keys with that particular system is we're no longer tying bans to just time, or punishments to just time. So a lot of players will be like, well, I'm banned, I'll hop on my Smurf account, play for 3 days, and I'll hop back onto my main. So all the new account restrictions that we're currently testing are all tied to games played. So they can no longer do that. They have to play games on their main account and be good to lift all these restrictions back off their account. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Jeremy, and he literally just asked my question. But I also wanted to ask, when you go to the Tribunal, which I don't believe I ever have, which I'm happy about, have you ever considered, even if someone is pardoned, letting them know that they've been in the Tribunal?
We've talked about it in the past. So the main problem there is that if I'm a player, like the idea of the Tribunal is to really help inform, especially with reform cards, inform what the community feels acceptable and isn't. The Tribunal's always been optimized for, you know, the ban state and the punish state. And actually, we've done a lot of work in order to try and make it so that we reduce the number of false positives as low as possible. You know, we're not probably ever going to get rid of false positives completely, but we definitely want to minimize it. And so the problem is there are outlier cases that will get pardoned that probably shouldn't necessarily, and they'll come back. The problem is if we start showing pardons to players, they might get the wrong idea that the community is totally accepting of that behavior, and it might reinforce poor decisions that we'd really rather not have there. I think that what we want to do instead is find different ways to highlight positive behaviors rather than highlight behaviors that qualified for the Tribunal, but the judges decided were borderline enough to not make it, right?
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Luke, and I wanted to say that I hope George enjoyed his kiss yesterday.
Oh, it's Tarek.
Tarek. If your form avatar isn't Tarek by Monday, I'll be truly disappointed in you. Anyway, my question is, you guys do an awesome job with all of your player-driven behavior things. You know, you let the players decide what's good, what's bad, who's a upstanding pillar of the community, and who's toxic. And that's great, and it seems to have a lot of good results. I've noticed since, you know, 2.5 years ago when I started playing, that behavior is greatly improved than what it used to be. But have you ever considered reaching out to other developers or other people in the industry to try to share some of what you've learned and see if we can make, you know, the whole community as opposed to just the LoL community a better place?
I mean, I think that's something we're definitely engaging in right now. We arrived before PAX to speak with other researchers and other folks working in the field to talk about how we can share what we're doing to make things better for games in general. We don't just want to hoard all the knowledge. That's not exactly how science operates.
We'll actually be at GDC next week. Me and Jeff are flying directly there from here. And Jeff is actually going to be doing a talk there, and I'm sure we'll be talking to a lot of people there about sharing what we believe, why we believe it, you know, going over the player behavior pillar stuff first, or not first, player behavior pillar stuff there. I wanted to share that with our players first, but sharing it with the industry is equally important.
So we'll have a lot of data at GDC. Awesome. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I've been playing League of Legends probably for about 2 years. I really appreciate everything that you guys, like your forum threads about player behavior. They're always 70, 80 pages with a response from one of you guys on like every other page, and that is awesome. One of the things that I've noticed in terms of player behavior and the Riot response to a lot of these systems is there's a hesitancy to provide transparency to a lot of these systems, and I don't know if that's around, you know, you're afraid of players gaming the system and other things like that, or more directly, like if you consider how Xbox Live handles player behavior. Like if I look at my account, you know, I'll see 5 stars. Well, you know, that makes sense to me as a player. Underneath that, I see what people have reported before, you know, and the bulk of that was for leaving in the middle of a game. You know, as a father, you know, shit happens. So, literally. So, you know, that was no surprise to me, and, you know, as a geek, the more information, the better. I need more information, you know, more transparency. Understanding how these systems work is fascinating to me. Can you speak about, you know, some of the hesitancy to provide that information to players and some of the things that, you know, you implemented reform cards, for instance, but...
So just to clarify, your question is on hesitancy for transparency of the systems themselves and how they work, and not necessarily the actual information that the system might give the player?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of what we want to be transparent about is why we're trying to do things, how we approach it, that sort of thing. We spoke earlier to the question about like telling all players all the reasons why they were reported and how that can create negative experiences. And you know, speaking to your own example, right? Like, you know, understanding that you're leaving in the middle of the game is the common reason why you're reported. You sort of it makes it okay, and you know, in some ways that's cool and that's awesome. But on the other hand, there's areas where that wouldn't necessarily be the greatest. I think that our own nature is to game the system, and once we understand exactly where the boundaries are, test them and test them and test them. And that goes to a lot of the reasons why we trend towards not showing everything underneath the hood, because then you get situations where people really try to abuse it. But at the same time, we do try to be as open as possible, sharing information and statistics for how the systems perform on the forums. Reform cards is actually a really great example. All reform cards are hosted online. They're just a web link. And there's actually some really great community sites that aggregate that and try to analyze what's going on in the tribunal and understand the system and really talk about what's been going on. So I think that we trend towards transparency very heavily, but we recognize that with all things, there's certain parts of the system that we can't be super transparent about, just to preserve the system as a whole.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Gerald. I've been playing for about a year now. And one of the things that sort of bothers me is when I think of an unskilled player, since I'm stuck in my Division 5, like I'm sure a lot of us probably are, I think of someone that doesn't know game mechanics and maybe needs a little bit of work. And like you said, Status, I try to be the good guy that helps them, talks to them a bit during the game, and fills the role that's necessary. Why is there a report unskilled player option at the end, even with the comments area? I feel that kind of is punishing someone when they really could be improving. Like, there should be a third choice. They maybe would get some sort of a message saying, hey, people like you, but you could do a little better, or maybe they cause a little less people saying, go back to bot games, or get out of draft mode, get out of rank, you suck, etc.
We've debated about that report a lot. On the forums, I did mention that at some point in the future, we want to revamp all the report categories. A lot of them kind of are redundant. Unskilled report is a really controversial one. For example, League is for all players of all skill levels, right? Like, I don't care if you're bronze, you deserve to be able to play ranked, and we just need to do a better job of placing you to where you belong at a quicker pace. But what Unskilled Reports does right now is it just provides data for the matchmaking system. You can never be banned for that report. That report doesn't go to the tribunal at all. We probably just haven't done a good job separating that. Hey, that is a different kind of report, and that's to help inform matchmaking.
I think that's good information to know, because I don't think a lot of us look at it that way and may see that as the scary, oops, I had a bad game, I'm going to get reported for this.
Yeah, just to be really clear, if you're reported for unskilled player, you will not ever get sent to the tribunal for that. Won't ever go there, but it does give us some really, really cool information that helps us update matchmaking and stuff. Like, we can start seeing patterns of like, hey, people who are playing a champion for the first time or a role for the first time, this is sort of where these patterns emerge, and we can correlate that back to ELO in really cool ways and stuff. So it gives us a lot of good data, even if it is a little bit terrifying for players, but be assured you will not get banned for that.
I haven't gotten banned from it yet.
Thank you.
Hey guys, what's up? My name's Josh. I just have a few quick things to say, small questions, and I kind of want to address these guys. But first, my main question, in the Tribunal, I know a lot of us probably use the Tribunal if you're in this room, and when people get reported and they're speaking different languages, it's a pain in the ass. And I know you could just use the skip button, but is there a way that you guys could do like language selection? Because that really sucks for people who use it a lot. I mean, I run into a lot of people doing that. Like, that's my small question first.
Sure. So we've talked about that a lot. There's definitely issues there as far as language concerns go. Most people do tend to skip it, but do voice that that's not always a very satisfying way of dealing with it. We've looked into it. There are definitely some challenges there of trying to identify, how do we know what languages people were speaking? How do we know what languages you speak? Will you self-identify for the right languages? Does that even help when there are 2 or 3 different languages being spoken in the same match? That sort of thing. It's definitely a problem that's on our minds and we're looking to solve, but we don't have a great solution to implement right now.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I know it would be a difficult problem. I just wanted to know what your thoughts were on it. And I do have to say I am a terrible League player, but I do try. I probably get reported a lot for unskilled, and I know a lot of you they all say they bang my mom, so a lot of you have probably been to my house. So, you know, as like a very avid Tribunal user, I'm sure a lot of you like are ranked and whatnot. Please don't just click the punish button, because I know the guy who's like 89th in the world, he told people in the forums to do that, and I read that and I made another account just to try it, and yeah, you get a high percentage, but that's not what you're supposed to do. Like, honestly, I read every single case, and you'd be surprised why people get sent to the Tribunal. Like, people don't talk at all, and they'll get reported, and it's just probably because they were bad at the game, they fed a little bit, like, some people don't have like a great connection, and, you know, it sucks to be them, but, you know, we've seen cases.
Yeah,
like,
we've seen some cases where, you know, someone gets reported for abusive language and their chat log is completely blank. You know, and the community has done a really good job, though, of not punishing those players. So we're fortunate in that the community really pays attention to it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, sort of to that point, like, if you do spam punish, I do think you will have a decent percentage of games that you are correct in, but what you'll notice is you won't get very high streaks effectively, like you won't be very accurate many games in a row. This shouldn't really come as a shock. The Tribunal is really for the people who perform and act consistently terribly in the game. There's probably a high percentage of them that do, you know, need to be punished, right? Like, that's kind of the idea of the system. But there are people who are in there who need to be part of it, and it is important to read the cases. And so, yeah, you might get a decent percentage, but that's one, not the point of the system, and 2, you won't ever get highly ranked because our ranking system values streaks, not just punishing all the people.
Yeah, I've noticed, because I do my own tests, because like I like to gain information too, and probably like 1 in 20 people need to be pardoned, and that's how many cases you get a day. Are you ever going to, like, for the higher ranked people, are you ever going to increase the amount of cases that they can actually view? Because 20, I enjoy reading Tribunal cases. They're really hilarious, because a lot of people bang my mom. Like,
okay, so do one of you guys want to take that real quick and
yeah,
then
sure.
the next question?
That's a definite possibility. So early on, what we're really concerned about is we don't want to burn players out, right? So a lot of players will log in and they'll want to finish all of their cases. If we simply make it 50 or 100, now you're there for like hours, and like, I got to finish.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot, right? So we might consider opening it a little bit in the future and expanding it as we go, but for now it's going to stay 20.
Alright, and just one last thing, I do 100% support like giving skins away for high-ranked players. I knew that was a topic on the forums. I'm just saying, I enjoy it. Just saying. Alright, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ruben. I'm from California. Somebody took my questions a while ago, but I just wanted to comment about the honor system and how we've been talking a lot about toxic players and things like that, but I think we really need to focus more on not just the neutral players, but the good players. And I just wanted to comment that the honor system really worked out. One of you mentioned that as soon as it came out, there was a spike, but I've noticed that in all my games, just people being generally nicer, just because there's that possibility of game teamwork or whatnot. So that was just a personal, really big victory. And I was just wondering, somebody else mentioned it, but is there going to be any kind of other incentives besides just the badge? I mean, just the skin, something a little bit more bigger, a little bit more.
I think Jeff mentioned earlier that the idea is that we want to move towards rewarding positive players in unexpected ways. So rewards work best when you don't know they're going to come. I think that's something that's definitely on the rise.
I mean, George, you want to talk about some of the stuff we brought today?
Sorry?
Did we bring stuff today?
Oh yeah, okay, so here's a nice reward. So everybody in the audience, we've got some honor badges for you guys. So you're going to get one honor badge, and then you'll get a second one that we want you to give to somebody else who you think is an honorable opponent or teammate.
Yeah, we're giving those out as you leave the theater, so even the people who have been leaving early, I think our guys have been outside the theater, hidden and secreted, doing that all along. So we're still answering a few questions. I'm not exactly sure how much time we have left because we got started a little bit late. But as you leave, you go ahead and pick up an honor badge, and we have 5 minutes, so let's get another question in.
Thank you.
All right, my name's Mitch. I'm from Canada. I'm challenger tour, but only in my dreams. So first I have a suggestion. In reference to the earlier statement of being able to select who you play at the start, rather than that, think of it this way. If you could have by your name a list of roles you're good at, and everyone has it next to them, it'll give everyone a pre-exemptive example of who to let play who. Now, my question, and rather than question, it's more like a situation, because this will happen to a lot of people. Say you're in a game, you're playing with someone, and rather than them being toxic, they're anti-toxic. So what I mean to say is, you may offend them or make them think you're trying to threaten them or whatever, and they block you. Now, this can be walked away from, but when you're blocked, it's really hard to communicate with them, and you can lose the game because of that. What would be the best course of action to remedy such a situation, would you say?
Well, I mean, I think that we've tried to put in some efforts to make communication a little bit easier. The smart ping system is a great example of that. That sort of thing. I think in general, just stay calm and be cool and try to communicate your best regardless, and don't focus on that one person blocking you or anything. It's really your best course of action overall. I think down the line we may need to add more communication tools to the game potentially, but that sort of remains to be seen. Let's see how radio ping does. Just as a note towards your suggestion, that's one of the things that the community's brought up a lot, and it has been discussing in that forum thread around matchmaking, or not matchmaking, but champ select. And just to reiterate, since I said that at the beginning, but just again, like if you guys want to participate in that discussion, I totally hope you do. Just jump onto the forums and jump into that thread, and we're still keeping an eye on it. So all of those kinds of ideas are great, and I would stick them there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks. We only have a couple minutes left, so we're probably only going to get to a couple more questions. Of course, we're more than happy to answer questions after the panel as well. And don't forget that there's a pub crawl tonight, and there'll be lots more than the four of us there. So any questions you guys have, even potentially about things that I had on the slide but are not mentioning today, you'll be able to ask those questions as well. So we'll go to the next question.
Hey guys, proudly represent the bronze tier. Bronze tier representative. I really like League of Legends. It's my favorite PC game. But if you go on Google and you search for toxic behavior, League of Legends comes up. It's Riot's Fault comes up. Do you think that's something that's unique to League of Legends? Because every other game I've played, multiplayer-wise, this is the only game that's told me to stick things in more orifices, or to go screw things or jump in traffic. If I get one, if I'm supporting and I take one CS, God help me, you know. I don't. Have you considered? This is probably come up before. Have you considered having the ability to ignore players? And if you have a player that's ignored a lot by a lot of people, that would probably raise a red flag for you. Like, hey man, this player's probably a piece of shit. We should probably take a look at it.
You do already have the ability to ignore players in game. In the scoreboard, you can click to mute somebody, and you can ignore that player if they're exhibiting toxic behavior and you just don't want to deal with it in that match.
But you can still be matched up with them in games.
Oh, okay, I see. So your question is having the ability to
just ban
flag
that
someone as someone that you never want to play with again?
Like I would rather die in the street than play with that player.
We've definitely considered a bunch of features and ideas and are actively doing research around something similar. We definitely want to stay on point with creating with a lot of the pillars and making it a good experience for all involved and make sure that's not super open to abuse. But yes, I mean we're definitely considering things on that.
I think the key thing there is abuse. So imagine a ranked experience where I can exactly choose who I want to play with or against by simply muting select players. So in normal mode, that feature is more has more potential. But for modes like ranked, we need to figure out those abuse cases and how to avoid those.
All right, thank you. GG.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm very sorry to say, unfortunately, we are out of time. But thank you guys. Big round of applause for you guys. You are awesome.